Peace, bro. You good?
Yeah, let me tighten up the. It's like I'm off center. Hold on. Right there.
Yeah, the sound is good too.
You can hear me? Cool.
Yeah. I was just testing it out with my queens. They down there in DC and the Baltimore area.
The
So
hot spot.
uh-huh.
You know, it's funny, dude. Earlier this year, I was right down the street from Mitch McConnell's house. Like I was in his neighborhood, like a couple houses away.
You stop by and say hi?
I thought about it. I don't know. See, you know, that whole thing, like where he got spray painted and stuff. I'm like, is that even possible? I don't know. Like, it was a nice neighborhood. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, man. So it's good to see you, man. Everything
Always.
been good?
Yeah, just been busy. You know, Odin is he's talking like full sentences. Like you could have a complete conversation with him, and even today he was reading a little bit. So, you know, just spending time with the family, working on my craft.
Yeah, yo, I gotta get you this book. A is for Alchemist.
Oh yeah, Liz was talking about it.
Yeah, it's excellent. Anusha, she's saying stuff like intuition and X chromosome and
That's awesome.
all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? Caleb, he's in the chat right now. He's the one that actually inspired me to get you on here because him and quite a few other people have had opportunity to hear some of our previous podcasts and just get a glimpse of the type of relationship and the conversations that we just naturally have. And that's one reason why I even wanted to create that platform to kind of give people a sense of those type of conversations, the type of presence of the people that I'm connected with intimately. And I'm not sitting around having conversations all the time about things that by others' standards would be considered trivial. You know, we have more substantive conversations, things about humanity, things about,
Right.
changing this world and living a purposeful life. And, those things are important. So I wanted to make sure that I give people an opportunity to literally see it, that it's not staged, it's not contrived. It's no, this is exactly what it is.
Yeah, no, man. I mean,
You
you
know?
know, we've known each other now for I think 10 years, going on 10 years. I think
Yeah, in the
2011 is
physical. In the
in the
physical.
physical. In the physical. Yeah. I forget sometimes that we can have that discussion because like what you were just saying, you know, that's one reason why a lot of people don't like to talk to me is because it's like, you know, I'm not just going to sit here, like my family, you know, I love my family, but I got to be honest, man, like, you know, they want to talk about everything under the sun that to me has no substance, you know? And so it's like when we ever get a chance to build, whether it's over the phone or in person, you know, like that's like an oasis for me, you know?
Yeah. And you know what? Being able to navigate those type of spaces is important, and that's kind of leading me to what I wanted to talk a little bit more about, you being a filmmaker and having that type of challenge with your own family that may be orientated a little differently in terms of things that they see as important or things that they want to talk about. Do you see and have you experienced the same thing in the film industry where you have people with certain type of mindsets and mentalities that may find it challenging to talk on the level in terms of what you may be more interested in?
Well, the short answer, yes. Long answer. So I've been head of my company now since we created our original company in 2009. But for 5 years, I would say, I was a hired gun for Hollywood, New York City, Toronto, Italy. Um, being a hired
Oh,
gun, what's
yeah,
that?
yeah. Yeah, what do you mean by a hired gun? Because
Yeah,
some
being a
people may
hired
not
gun.
know
So I'm known as a fixer. It's kind of the same thing I do in the politics. You know, stuff goes down in a film production that you wouldn't believe, and you're talking millions of dollars at stake. you need somebody that can come in and just like fix it all, like just make it work, and it's like MacGyver, you know. Like I specialize in production, which is everything under the sun of making the actual movie. It's its own department. Like producers are in production, assistant directors are in production, production assistants are in production, office work and stuff like that. But we don't. When I say we, the people that I work with, we don't always get along and see eye to eye. So I kind of retired from the film industry at large, like working as a hired gun years ago because of that. You know, like everything's ego with them, you know, Hollywood, and it's all ego. You know, they really care more about how they look and how they're perceived, and they don't care about art. They don't care about creativity or people. You know, like you're really treated as if you're an object on a movie set, you know, and I'm not cool with that. So, you know, I'm an artist, man. I really just want to create, and I want to be with other creatives and collaborate and, you know, make something special that didn't exist before. So it's a big rip that I've had between my creativity and whatever the hell it is. You know, I can't call it creativity. It's just business, but you know, the Hollywood at large, I can't do it.
Dang. So in terms of what you say about your creativity, is it much different, would you say, from what you see that's traditionally coming out of Hollywood? How does that vary?
Well, I think by now most people know that Hollywood typically follows a formula. You know, you got remakes, you got sequels. If something works, if something was a hit, they just keep doing more of that. And they'll repackage it with different actors and a different title, but it's always the same stories over and over and over again. Like how many Batman movies do we have? You know what I mean? Like Batman came out in like 1930s, and you know what I mean? Like if we have like there's really probably like 20 story models that Hollywood uses. So even if it's not, for me, even if it's not the best idea, if I have an original idea, I build on it, I flesh it out, I work on that, and then every once in a while, man, I get hit with inspiration that like you know, I was just telling you privately that, you know, I just completed a package for a movie that I can't even believe that I wrote it. I'm so proud of it. You know, like I've seriously, like, it revitalized me in a lot of ways just by letting it out. You know, like it was something that was in me, and somebody gave me the green light, and I was just like, you know, and I wrote this movie in 2 days. You know, so like in Hollywood, you have like a team of people who are all trying to put a story together because they don't have a creative bone in their body. So they're trying to figure out how to write a story, you know, and these guys got like hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're over here in Niagara Falls just trying to survive, you know?
Yeah, and I can't stand that. Like sometimes I see a story that's supposed to be written about black people, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, where the hell do they get these black people from? And who the hell wrote this? Because I do not know no black people that use that type of language,
Yeah.
that has those type of social norms. I don't know where this must be coming from, somebody's imagination. And
Yeah.
as I learned a little further, I found out that you got these white writing rooms without a black face in the room to even give some insight into, this is how we would do this and this is not how we would do this. And there's just a lot of times this sense of arrogance that I also see, and this exclusiveness where people feel as if they're qualified to be able to tell other people's stories. You know what
Well,
I
you hit
mean?
it on the head. I mean, you know, like you know, I work really close with certain tribes and indigenous elders and storytellers and people that. So I hear it a lot from my indigenous friends and family because, I mean, it's so endearing, right? Like Native American stories are just so endearing to people that, you know, you have all these fantastic elements of wonder and, you know, stuff that like imagination when you were a kid that brings it back to life. And, you know, they never lost that. That's their culture. But, you know, it's funny that you touch on that because Do you know what the term is for the study of Native American culture?
No, the it's a specific term, sort of like Egyptology.
Yeah, it's archaeology. Yeah. So it's like they're not even
Whoa.
they're not here. You know what I mean? Like they're not even alive. They're
Wow.
fossils. So like you saw the trial of the Chicago Seven, right? You remember when they were sitting outside the Smithsonian and he was like, I'm not cool with that, man. You got the Cherokee next to the cavemen. And they made it look
Yeah.
like it was like a progression, like they evolved from cavemen into Cherokee and now they're not here today. It's
Yeah.
like whoever wrote that knew a thing or two, and they included that in the story. So I really
Hmm.
appreciated that movie.
And you know what? That's something that I noticed as well. I've noticed by watching some films or series that you have somebody that's behind the scenes that know a little bit, because they put specific elements in there that you would only recognize it if you are a learned person or you've done research on various different things. And to me, a lot of times it just sticks out like a green thumb, like, yo, who's behind this? Because some of the stuff that they putting in here, they have to have some sense of knowledge of self for
Yeah.
them to even include certain things in some of these films. So in your journey, have you come in contact with people that you would say have some sense of knowledge of self that's working within the film industry?
Yeah, I have. And I just want to say, because there was just a comment about what we were just talking about, and that's true. You can't be an expert on someone else's culture, like it's impossible. Like I can't be an expert on Black culture. I don't embody Black culture. I'm not a living Black man. So like I'm always going to be looking at, even though I am technically half Black, but nobody lets me play that card. But so that's that comment's right on. But yeah, I know some people, producers in Hollywood, who are now they're up in, there's tiers. So like tier one is like your big blockbusters, and then tier two are like the so-called indie studios that are still doing $50 million movies. So I know people who are up in the tier two that definitely have knowledge of self, and now they're starting to move up to tier one because of the pandemic. So
Mm.
there's a big changing of the guard happening in Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood historically has just been the good old boys, plain and simple, and like everything that you hear about, like objectifying women, and like you were just saying, rewriting people's cultures, and how they would speak, and all of it. That's all true, and like I had known about Harvey Weinstein since like 2008, 2009, when I started going to LA, and it was like then that whole thing with Harvey Weinstein came out like a couple years ago, and I'm like, why is this news? Like these people knew about it for decades, you know what I mean? And finally something happened. And you know how it is, dude, especially here, we see it all the time. When you got like this section of billionaires and then this dynasty, and they run together for centuries, but then something happens, there's a rift, a power struggle, and they start to devour each other. Like look at what's happening to Trump right now. You know what I mean? Like his people are turning on him, and now that they're turning on him, he's radioactive. So it's like, you know everything that we experience in society, in a very real sense of the term, is a simulation. Like how money has no real value. We just, we pretend that it has value. So in that simulated type atmosphere, I'm not talking about trees, I'm not talking about birds, I'm not talking about rivers or us. I'm talking about the fashion, the vernacular, like all of those things. We walk on the fringe of a simulation and what's natural and organic. And what's built atop this organic world is this simulated world that, as long as we're participating in it and as long as we are playing into it, we're always going to have the bottom hand. We're always going to be the underdog.
Hmm. Yeah, the question that Caleb was talking about is, he was saying that he's been working as a writer in terms of doing comics, and in terms of that creativity. He says, I love film, but I've heard so many people say what you say about the limited creativity. Do you think it's even worth trying to play in that world at this point? And you had mentioned something about a change into the guard in Hollywood, especially during this pandemic. And what have you seen happening with these major film companies and these live streaming companies as well?
Yeah, so I got my finger on the pulse. You know, I've had my finger on the pulse since before the pandemic. You know, and when everything got shut down last March, it was like us as a small indie studio, we were still moving, you know, and all the working parts of all these major studios, the more parts, the more complex, the more complicated, and the more chance of something going wrong. So, you know, you get a little cog that falls out of the machine, and now you know, the whole machine gets broke. So we were able to keep moving while these bigger studios were stalled out. And so what's happening right now, Hollywood has lost billions of dollars. The studios no longer have control of the film industry. Now the streaming platforms all have control of the film industry. And those streaming platforms with Netflix on top of the pyramid, they need content. Okay, so they're going to people like me who we kept the fire going the whole time, and they saw that fire and they were like, "Oh shit, we gotta get somebody that can work on a low budget with as few amount of people as possible on set because of COVID." You know, like their COVID insurance in Hollywood is $100,000 a week right now. So the studios are going to be suing the insurance companies. That's why Tom Cruise is shooting over in Italy. You know, like there's so much that they're navigating and they're eating each other on top. So to answer Caleb's question, we have cameras on our phone, on our iPad, on our computer. You can, as a writer, you know, you can actually produce something in your own home. It doesn't have to be $1 million production. It just has to be good. You know, like the story has to be good. It has to be told well. Content is everything. Intellectual property is everything. So if you have original ideas, you need to write them down, but you need to do it in a specific format. So the first thing I would do is I would write a synopsis. You know, just a one-page synopsis, what this movie's about, the main characters and the story, beginning, middle, to end, and then I flesh that out into an outline, and I take that outline and basically what I do is our house is kind of like a movie studio, you know, and my wife is also a screenwriter and part of our company. So we take a piece of chalk and we'll draw all across the wall in a timeline, and then we'll hit different marks on the timeline. So we'll have a 10-minute point or 15-minute point, and then we'll jump to 65, 70-minute point. The 10-minute point or 15-minute point is where the conflict comes in. Okay, so the conflict drives the story. So somebody dies, or the villain shows up and, you know, takes over everything, or whatever it is. You know, like in Die Hard, the conflict is that the terrorists come into the building in the Christmas party and they crash everything. You know, so that happens around 10 or 15 minutes. If you want to really get to the conflict right away, you could put it even sooner, you know, but you got to flesh out the story a little bit more and introduce who the characters are first. And then towards the end, about 70, it could even, like nowadays, movies are getting longer and longer. You know, now you got 3-hour epic movies, but it should be around like 65, 75 minutes. That's where the climax hits. So the entire body between 10 to 70, that whole body is telling the story. And now we're getting into the 3-part act, the beginning, middle, and end. The end starts with the climax. That's the third act. Okay, so now you got from the climax to the resolution somewhere between 30, 35 minutes. The big car chase, you know, the whole shebang, everything happens. It goes crazy, you know, like the whole, that's where you really got to leave it all out there, because when people go to see a movie, the last thing they remember is the last scene. And they walk out into the lobby with the picture of the last scene, like, damn, that was a good movie. And hi, Robert, I see you.
Yeah. Yo, so in terms of him being a creative and other people, like you mentioned, that actually have access, and what you just described in terms of putting a story together with the synopsis, what are you ultimately saying in terms of the shift with the streaming platforms as opposed to Hollywood? Are you saying that people have more access now in terms of being able to express themselves creatively with creating content?
100%. So for the last 100 years or so, there have been gatekeepers, and these gatekeepers, number one, are racist. Dude, like I don't even care at this point because I know some of these gatekeepers. Racist. They look like racists. They look like Nazis. Like they were bred to be these gatekeepers. Like big crew cut. They look like they've been on the force for 40 years and just hate black people. And they
Oh,
sit they sit between the creatives and the studio executives. So it'll be like, no, you're going into the dump bin, like they'll just keep sending everybody over to the no line, and then they're letting their people into the yes line. Now these gatekeepers are almost impossible to get by. You have to have an agent, and you have to have an agent from a specific agency, which there's only like two, like CAA, and United Talent. Like it's like those two agencies is everything, right? Well, you can't get an agent with those agencies unless you're part of the good old boys club. So it's like those agencies work with the studios. The agents get paid, they get their commission. The actors get millions of dollars. The writers usually get like shit unless they're like a big name writer, and everyone else gets cut out of the deal, right? And then it's snakes in the grass. Like they'll lie, cheat, steal, they'll murder people. Like you're talking Hollywood. Let's be honest. Nowadays, though, and I say nowadays, like just with the last year, the gatekeepers lost control. They don't got the keys to the kingdom no more. Who's got the keys? The custodians got the keys. Like it went all the way down to us. And so now it's like, okay, we can do whatever we want to do. These companies are coming our way because they need content. So somebody like Caleb that is a writer, he needs to have his website set up. He needs to be very clear about what his strengths are, about what he's looking to do, about who he is. And they're fishing. They're fishing for people right now, for creatives. A writer in Hollywood is like a messiah because so few people can actually write. If there's a really good writer, that person is, I'm not talking directors, I'm not talking actors. There's a billion actors. Everybody wants to be a director. Okay. Somebody who can actually write right now, this is the new golden era. We're seeing a new renaissance. I just saw that some guy on TikTok, which I don't have a TikTok, so I'm not an authority to talk about that. But I did see the news that some guy on TikTok just got a deal with CAA, Creative Artists Agency. So it's like, dude was just on TikTok dancing, and there's another guy who got a deal with CAA for his music from TikTok because everyone was taking his samples, sampling it and putting it out there. So like we didn't have that. You know what I mean? Like I didn't even have like SD cards or like a computer, man. Like we're shooting in camera, VHS to VHS, VCR to VHS. You know what I mean? Like if I was like 18 years old right now with the access to the technology, to YouTube, Twitter, all the social media platforms, all of it, that's exactly what I would be doing. I would just be pumping
Yeah,
out as much content as I can.
yeah, yeah. There's I've been seeing a lot of comedians who've gotten a lot of their big breaks with that direct to consumer relationship with social media as well, where they constantly create original content, short little scripts. And from there, they've been able to parlay that into having full house um, comedy specials and shows, people booking them to go different places, even
Mhm.
under these circumstances with COVID-19. And they did that from just social media. It's crazy. It's like I remember growing up, and in in school you were told you can go to college, you can join the military, and then maybe they may put a trade in there. Nowadays a lot of these children that are growing up, that's not the only routes. You have people who are
Right.
professional gamers,
I know
and
it's
they make
crazy.
a livelihood.
You know,
You know?
and for so long, people have laughed at like a liberal arts degree is a joke, right? You know, like everyone, like, oh, you got your liberal arts degree, you know, or you know, if you want to go get like a fine arts degree or something like that, it's like, you know, what are you gonna do? Be a curator at a museum? You know, like that. You when you're a creative, we're living in a time that right now we're seeing a resurgence, but this ain't the Renaissance, like where you could get a patron like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo had, you know, some wealthy patron that just is your benefactor and be like, wow, I love it. This person's amazing. You know, let me just support this person. Now you have to do it yourself. You could build up a following. I mean, you know, everybody. I'm sure everybody's keen to that understanding, right? Like everyone's trying to race to get Instagram. I've done the opposite. You know me, dude. Like we're the fish swimming in the other direction. So, you know, like I never spent time building like my YouTube following is like 24 subscribers. You know, like I don't focus on that stuff. I always have focused on the craft and on building relationships, because for me, it's not what you know, is who you know. So I've networked all the way up to, like, you know, I got friends who ran entire networks and major studios, you know, and like just the other day, somebody told me that the head of Universal Studios watched one of my skits and was laughing his ass off. And I'm like, tell him to call me. What the fuck? Like, why? You know, like I hear that all the time. Like, someone's like, dude, I get emails and messages from famous actors on a periodic basis. Like, when are we gonna work together? I'm like, get the money. You know, I can't pay you. You're expensive. You know, so it's like, dig your ditches, right? Like, you got to get prepared. You got to get ready, because what's gonna happen if you want to be a professional writer and somebody comes to you and you don't got a screenplay ready?
Exactly. Exactly.
You
It's the
know,
same thing
so
with
I'm working. I'm
musicians.
always working.
Yeah, it's the same thing with musicians. One thing I tell people, if they wanted to start writing articles, or if they wanted to start a podcast, or if they want to do anything like that, you need to be prepared and have an archive of content before you even put yourself out there in that type of position. Because when you meet a person, and especially if they're in the music industry and they're interested in collaborating with you, they're not just going to ask you for one song. They want to know, what albums have you done? What work have you completed? Because they're more interested in not just simply the content, but also the consistency. You know, like I tell people all the time, artist Dej Loaf out of Michigan, out of Detroit, before she even became public, she was putting out music more on a more local, regional level. And Drake actually quoted one of her lyrics on social media, and that got her over 100 and something thousand followers instantly. And that catapulted her into the limelight, where now she started to have these collaboration opportunities with all these other artists, and she was prepared. She wasn't scrambling, striving to get her
Right.
material and stuff like that ready when somebody called her. And that oftentimes is one of the downfalls that I see with a lot of people. Some people
Hmm.
want to be public speakers, but if somebody contacted you today and say, "Hey, I need you to speak on this topic tomorrow," or "Can you send me this in a week or so? Would you be prepared to do it?" A lot of people wouldn't be prepared, you
Right.
know, and it's
And,
like,
and what you're saying too, like that's your body of work it represents you as a creative. You know, like we had a movie called Wolf House. It's a $5,000 budget movie that went into Walmart and, you know, played in some theaters, and it did pretty good for a no budget movie. And we just got the rights back to it. So
mm,
it was out there for 5 years. Now it's come back, and now we're about to license it to, you know, all kinds of streaming services, and because we own it. So like the number one advice that I could give to creatives right now is to own your own intellectual property, because content is king right now, and it's going to be that way for like the foreseeable future. Intellectual property, that's your brand, that's everything. So, you know, it's like you own all your books, you know, like you self-publish your books. You're not beholden to anybody, you know.
mhm,
And having that intellectual property, you don't know. I mean, you could have an idea that somebody could say, look, I'll give you $1 million for it, but we're going to rewrite it and we're going to make it into something else. You know, we just want the idea. You could be at home selling intellectual property the same way people sell hot dogs. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
If you could
Wow.
keep up with it.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that we was building about before, you had mentioned, and you said that some large studios in Hollywood have a reputation of doing exactly what you said, taking a person's idea and
Yeah.
rewriting the film
Yeah.
and burying it so that it never comes out again. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I met some filmmakers who sold their movie to the Weinstein Company. This is before Harvey and the scandal. So it was like 5, 6 years ago that I met these guys. And when they sold their movie to Weinstein, which is a huge studio, um, what Weinstein did was they took the movie and they put it in a vault. So they had the rights to it, and they didn't want anybody to see that movie. And they remade the movie with famous actors in it, and they, were in complete control of all the creative aspects of the new movie, and they didn't want the two to compete. They wanted everybody to just see their version of it. So the movie that the original one, the filmmakers that made, never saw the light of day. And
Oh,
so
wow.
there's like, I don't know if anybody out here wants to be a filmmaker or is a filmmaker, but I negotiate all my contracts for our company, and there's a couple of things that you have to really look out for. And one thing that I put into our contracts is a no shelf clause. So a no shelf
Mm,
clause says that uh, if the movie is not distributed by X amount of time, 12 months to 18 months, whatever it is that you choose, that the contract is null and void. So that saves you from that type of thing, because Hollywood is just a nasty place, man.
mm. Have you ever, I know you've done it just based upon who you are, but in terms of functioning more as a consultant, have you done that for some people in terms of negotiating contracts for them? And if people are actually striving to be in that industry, if they wanted you to look over something or whatever, have you ever thought about functioning like as a consultant in that capacity for people that need that kind of advice and insight?
I did it for years as a community service, because I try to grow our film industry here, in the film community here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and nowadays with partners, other companies, like I help them to handcraft their distribution contracts. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I worked at a law firm before, and like I wish I wasn't versed in legalese, but I am. And like there's some things that, like wording, like if it's not in the contract, then you could bet that they'll screw you over, So
Mm,
I read it for people, and then I always recommend that they got to have an entertainment attorney that looks it over. But entertainment attorneys, they'll help you get that deal, and they'll help you craft it the way it needs to be crafted. But some of them aren't always, like, it's not their expertise. Like distribution might not be, you know what I mean? So it does help. Like I always, there's certain things that I always put into contracts. There's a no shelf clause. You need to put in a cap. We got screwed on our first movie that we made that was called Crimson the Motion Picture.
oh,
The
wow.
distributors were out, and they were having like 4-star hotels and fine dining and stuff on our dime, because we didn't install a cap because we didn't know what we were doing. Um, so basically, it's a spending cap, because you have a net deal with this entity. So you have to hit the net, and with no cap, you never hit the net. They just keep spending. It's like they can spend as much. They will travel on your dime. They go to film festivals. All the costs are on you. A good cap for a movie is 14,000. A great cap's 12,000 if you could get it. Once all the expenditures, all the costs, I'm talking like DVD printing, shipping, the whole 9 yards. Everything that is going, manufacturer, everything going to the store, retail, and paying their own people for artwork, all of it. Once that cost hits that 14,000 cap, then all of the profits, after $14,000, 50-50 split. So like our first movie made tens of thousands of dollars, and we only got an upfront check of like $1,500, and we were like, damn, we thought we were going to get something, but we ended up having to pull the exit clause on it, and getting them to dissolve the contract. We all agreed to it, and now we own it again. So live and learn, right?
Yeah. So did you even go to film school to learn all of this stuff, or self-taught, or how did you even get into this?
No. So when I was 10 years old, it's funny, I see somebody just tag Lorenzo in this. That's my brother. I taught him. He's one of my students. When I was 10 years old, I picked up a video camera. My parents split up. We lived in poverty. Like we were in a rat infested apartment, and it was like my mom was throwing away like this old home movie camera that she said didn't work. And I was like, oh, can I have it? And she was like, yeah, you can have it. I'm just throwing it away. Well, I turned it on, it worked. And me and my brother started making little home movies and doing like Jackass type stuff where, we would get in trouble in the neighborhood and film it. And I was really interested in special effects. I really wanted to, me, dude, like I'm creative. I wanted to build stuff. And so I started making puppets and fake like cuts and stuff, like you see all over now. People on Instagram and stuff do it. But then when I was 15, I got an apprenticeship with a guy named Fred Calandrelli, who was a one-time Disney producer, and he's a robotics expert. And my parents and him and his wife were friends, and then their daughter was my age. They came over for a 4th of July barbecue when I was 15. I was all nervous because I heard that he was a special effects artist. Like I'm like, oh shit, and I went outside to the barbecue, and I came back in, and he was in my bedroom, and my mom was showing him, like, oh yeah, he built that, and he built this, and he made that. I had like a hand that I made that crawled. It had wires, and so he was like, wow, I could see just by looking at the mess in here that he's a visionary. And so I got an apprenticeship with him, which is awesome. To this day, he's still a mentor to me, and we still work together whenever we can. He's like close to 80 now. And then after that, I was going to go to community college. I was like, you can't really learn filmmaking. Like you can learn like the basics, but you can't learn how to be an artist, right? You can learn how to hone it. So I got a scholarship out of the blue that I was totally blindsided with. It's just a $500 scholarship here in the Falls called the Joseph D. Arkey Scholarship. And I was like, damn, they just gave me $500. I couldn't apply to most of the other ones because I wasn't a female or wasn't a minority, or like I wasn't able to get these scholarships. So somebody just gave me $500, and I was like, oh, okay. I couldn't even apply to the Italian American scholarship. Saladin. I wasn't Italian enough. So even though I'm 50%, they were like, nah. So I got the money, and then I went to Niagara County Community College for communications. And I had a couple teachers that were trying to convince me not to be a filmmaker. So I took that money and I made a feature film. My first feature film was called Break the Sky. For $500, we just shot it in the house. We filmed all day, every day. Like the last day of filming was 24 hours straight. Then we entered into a film festival in Hollywood that was like a really small niche festival, but it got in and it played at the Lamely Theater, which is a historic theater on Sunset Boulevard, like right across the street from like the Chinese theater, Kodak, And I met a lot of people while I was out in Hollywood. I came back. I failed out of my class because they're like, where the hell were you? I was like, I was in Hollywood, and they were like, oh, there was a final exam. I was like, I thought you guys said that it would count towards my credit if I was making a movie, like they forgot that they said that. So I got what do they call that? academically dismissed. And then I enrolled again. And this time I just quit because I was like, this is like, you know me, man. Like I get uncomfortable in like office settings and school and stuff like that. So I wanted to just make movies. So we made another movie, that one I was telling you about, Crimson.
Mm-hmm.
And I made like hundreds of short movies. But Crimson got us noticed by the Sci-Fi Channel, and I got a job with. They came into town, a company called Trauma that did the Toxic Avenger, and then the Asylum then hired me after that. They're the ones who did the Sharknado movies, and they hired me for a couple movies. So my career just went like straight up, and I just kept making movies and getting recognized. But then, you know, I had to pick up the activist flag, and that just like it really put a damper on what I was doing. So nowadays people are like, oh, he's not a filmmaker, you know, he's just a crazy guy.
Yeah, that's the label that they give people who are conscious, that don't go along with the status quo. How challenging has that been, being able to balance, being able to navigate spaces around people who are not very active or conscious?
Activism is the worst thing I ever got into. Now I got into activism out of necessity. I don't think anybody gets into activism because they want to. You know, we're living in a city that's right next to one of the natural wonders of the world, Niagara Falls.
Mhm.
And we power almost half the East Coast, and we power New York City. But we're broke, we're poor, we got the highest crime rate per capita in the state. Trying to get something going here is like trying to start a fire with wet wood. And then it's like when you start to research and figure out and meet the people that are oppressing you, you know, like you got these billionaires who are just pilfering, just stealing all the money, all the wealth, all the prosperity, you know, like the whole bootstrap, you know what I mean? That whole thing, like
the 10%.
yeah, absolutely, man. And this is one of their main dugs, man. Like they live here, dude. Like this is I got a guy who lives down the street from me. That's like he's like one of the biggest crooks in the world. You know what I mean? So it's like once I started speaking out about certain things that I didn't even know what I had gotten involved in, to be honest with you, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna say something. You know, and then I spoke out at one of their rallies, the State of the State address. That's how the governor became my nemesis for a while. And you know, everybody knows Governor Como now, and all the people around the country are all, you know, oh, he's such a great governor. He did so good during the pandemic. And I'm like, that dude is a mobster. You know, like he's a bad person. He would soon let all of us die, and he would piss on the ashes. He don't care about anybody other than him and he's run by the 10%, man. He's just a puppet for him. I mean, you know, all these politicians are, but he's bad. So when I pissed him off in a big way, and now I was getting phone calls from senators and assemblymen, and all the news wanted to interview me and all this shit, I was like, this is it. You know, this is the revolution. We're about to do it. You know, and you know me, man. Like I got that blood in me. So I was like, all right, here we go. Let's just say we've lost a lot of people along the way. And, you know, now there's only a couple of us left. We're still fighting. I'm trying to get out of it because I've taken up too many fronts that aren't mine, like the tribes, you know, like it's not my fight. You know, it's a fight for the human race. It's a fight for people. You know, these are human rights. But at the same time, I have taken the role of educating them and giving them the history that they lost, because that history was covered over. That history was concealed and held from them. And so they called me and they were like, I didn't even know who the people who were calling me. And they're like, will you come? Will you speak? You were there at one of them. That's when you said that you didn't know I was a Black Baptist minister. I was, man, like I'm just empowering them because it's like you are an ancient race of warriors that survived genocide. You are the descendants of the survivors of genocide. And you're going to let them talk to you like this? So one thing, you can't be working with indigenous and black people and not get roughed up by the 10%. And for years, man, they had me in the grinder, just chewing me up and calling me a conspiracy theorist and all this shit. Now, just in the past 6 months, I've seen like 2 or 3 of the people I've been calling out get charged, get convicted. And I'm like, I can show you the proof.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the other benefits of that too is you're setting the standard in terms of our younger generation so that they know what a caring, critically thinking adult looks like. Because a lot of times you have people who just are on autopilot that just go along to get along and are not really thinking for themselves. I mean, look at all of the propaganda that we see right now with the stuff that just went down with the Capitol building. It's like any type of incident. And this is one thing that I've talked about before, with the development of technology and that exponential growth. Not only has our attention span been shortened, and it has rehardwired us to think in a truncated way. When you even look at the amount of characters that we're able to use on Twitter or some of these other different social media platforms, that has also created an urgency to stretch news stories. And I tell people, like, when you see a news story that's breaking, that's not the whole story.
Right.
They give you a portion of it. And then even if something's wrong, sometimes news companies put out something wrong on purpose just to get a headline out there to get attention so they could retract it the next day to get more traffic to the website. It's a game that people play in terms of the so-called journalism and the way that the media has created this way of stretching content, like we talked about earlier, because content is king right now, to stretch content to the point where they can maximize monetizing that content.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's like what Denzel Washington said one time. He said, if you don't read or watch the news, you're not informed. But if you do watch it, you're misinformed.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? So what are you going to do about it? You know what
Well,
I mean?
you need to be able to discern for yourself. You know what I mean? Like, yo, I could watch anything and tell you where the facts are. Like you have to educate yourself, because one thing is that a large percentage of everything that's shown to us is done so to manipulate you into buying shit or into acting a certain way. Like if somebody's drinking a drink in a movie and it has a label on it, somebody put that in their hand. Somebody made a conscious decision. Like we were watching Philadelphia, the movie with Tom Hanks and Denzel. At the end of the movie, the baby is drinking out of a baby bottle that says Pepsi Cola, and it's shaped like a Pepsi Cola bottle. And Liz was like, yo, pause it. It's crazy, man. Like they're trying to get babies drinking Pepsi Cola. It's like that. All of that stuff is subliminal, and you hear it in lyrics. As like you got all these rappers today that, like, most of them I don't even know their names, or I can't even say their names, because it's like that's not even a persona. It's just like like they're giving them crap. Here, regurgitate this crap, because we're trying to change the minds of children. So it's like what you're doing with the Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters. Just today, Liz was like, Odin's going to be going to that school, right? Like he's physically, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, Saladin's his mentor, is his tutor. Like he's already set, like he ain't going to public school, dude. Because when I was in public school, they were like, shut him up, put him in a room.
Really?
Like,
really?
I know, it's shocking, right? They've been trying to silence me since I could talk.
Yo, I told you when I was like 12 years old, my mother came home and she gave me and my siblings these buttons, and she gave me a button with a dude sitting on a rock like this, just thinking. And I was like, "What is that?" And she's like, "That's called the thinker. That's who you are. You're the thinker."
Yeah, man, and they want to get in your mind and control your thoughts, you know. And the thing is now with this whole uh I don't even know how to pronounce it, QAnon, or Q Anonymous, or like the crazy guy with the buffalo hat.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That whole whatever that is, nowadays, like everybody's a conspiracy theorist if you're even talking about it, right? But it's like it's
Mhm.
true that they want to control your mind.
Well, hold on,
Part of
hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Hold on. When you say they, who you talking about? You talking about the Illuminati?
how, how do you want to go about it? I mean, because we could name names and then we could get all the way to the core of it. But you know, I mean,
We
they
could
call
just
themselves
call
a
them
lot
the
of things,
10%.
man.
We just call them the 10%.
Yeah, you can call it the 10%. You can call it the 1% on top of the 10%. Really,
True.
like if you want to kick it up the flagpole, um,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a mentality, it's a disease, it's a parasitic entity. I mean, I can see it when somebody's got it. I can see it. Like if there's like
Mhm.
the Koch brothers, or like like Steve Bannon or anything. It's like they're sick looking, like like they're melting and shit, like the end of Indiana Jones. Like they just opened up the Ark of the Covenant and looked in it and they're fucked up. You know, I can see that in somebody. I'm like, there's
Yo,
something that's a parasite that's eating their life force. So
yo.
now
But
we got people talking about reptilians and shit, and everybody's going crazy, and you know,
yo, but I've seen pastors driving Maseratis
mhm,
of churches where I know members who have their lights off at that moment, or that's struggling paying bills and living paycheck to paycheck,
yeah,
but they're
man.
driving actually a Maserati. You know what I'm saying? So some people that's in that position too. That's feeding off the life force of the people. They look pretty good.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
like that
and
Joel
the bad
Osteen.
thing about it is they sell that idea and that image to children, and they
True.
aspire to be like that,
Like
not
the megachurch.
realizing that
Yeah,
there's a
like the
lot of
megachurch.
lives that are lost in the process of you just enriching yourself off of the labor of other people, and to not have any kind of empathy for those type of lives. You know what
But
I'm
they don't
saying?
see
So you
them.
got
They don't see them as human beings, bro. They don't see them as lives. You know,
yeah.
like I'm not somebody to preach about how I live my life. Like
Yeah.
you do you, I do me. Like as long as you're not harming anybody, everybody's cool. But I'm a Buddhist, so part of being a Buddhist means that I believe that there's a consciousness in all things. And even a rock, has some level, some substrate level, because I'm perceiving it. Like I'm projecting onto it. So there's something there that I'm recognizing. So animals, like they feel fear and they feel pain, they feel love, and like I'm just very particular about like what I put in my body. I'm very particular about what I put in my mind. One thing that I do is I teach people how to lucid dream and dreamwalk. I don't know if Robert's still on here, but he was somebody that had some success with it. And so I actually teach a
Yo, my
class.
my yo my middle queen Aziza, she did that for the first time recently, and we were talking about that.
Oh, that's
But
great, man. I would love to talk to her, help her hone it. Because there's so many
yeah.
different. It's endless, really.
Hmm. So yeah, so how did you even get to the point where you learn the capacity to be able to teach that, let
Yeah.
alone learning it and experiencing it?
Well, before I get into that, one thing I want to say is that so when I was first really focused on it and teaching myself how to do it, there was one night that I was sleeping and I was unconscious and I was dreaming, and in the middle of my dream, there was an Applebee's commercial, and it was like a steak came out on a plate, and it was sizzling, and like it was almost like a camera following the steak onto a table, and there was like it was like $9.99 for a short time, and like I woke up in the dream, and I was like, what the fuck is that? There's a commercial in my dream. So think about it. You know, you sit in front of the TV, you got commercials playing. You might not be paying attention to it, but you're hearing it. You know, you see it. It's going into your subconscious mind, and they got you from there. I'm watching a commercial. If I wasn't lucid, I would have never even known that that happened. I would have never even remembered it. And I might have woke up being like, I got to go to Applebee's, which I hate, can't stand, but they'll make you crave things. So I had my first lucid dream experience organically. I was having a normal dream, and this was I could tell you the day. It was May 12th or May 10th, 2012. And in that dream, I noticed that something was off, and I was like, this is a dream. And when I woke up, I felt like I've been hit by lightning. You know, like I had this energy. I'm sure your daughter was probably saying the same thing. I was like, I want more of that. That's what life is. You know, like I was not in my physical body. I was something else. What is this? And I started reading a lot. I started reading about shamanic techniques. I started reading about Buddhist monks and indigenous medicine people and seers and all of it. And I was like, okay, how do they all do it? You know, and I could teach you all right here, right now. You know, it's the actual technique, and I get paid to do this, so this is a free class. The actual technique is very simple, though. Wherever you are right now, you look around. You really take in your surroundings. Don't think, don't have any kind of internal dialogue. Just look at everything and ask yourself, is this a dream right now? Okay, so you're like, okay, if it is a dream, how do I know? And then what you do is you take your finger, you take your other hand, and you push it, and you try to push it through the palm of your hand. Okay, so it doesn't go through. So, all right, it's solid. Now, if you do that 15 times a day, every day, and you're somebody who's healthy and you have dreams, you know, you have to be able to dream first. But you really analyze everything, and you stop and you remember. Even if you're daydreaming, you know, like driving, or you zone out for a second, you go, wait a minute. What happens is after 6-7 days, you have a dream. Maybe you're like on the beach, you know, and you're like, yeah, this is cool. And then you stop, you go, wait a minute, how did I get here? I don't remember coming to the beach. And your finger goes through your hand, and it triggers a lucid dream. So that's called a reality check. And there's other things, like I got this on my wrist.
Yeah.
So all I have to do, I don't do the finger, I just look at it. Okay. I know you got the same thing on the back of your hand. I just look at it. And then when I'm in the dream and I wake up and I go, wait, is this a dream? I look at my wrist, and my mind tries to reconstruct this tattoo, but it's never able to do it perfectly. So there'll be something that's off, and they'll go, oh, okay, it's a dream. And then, you know, you use meditation and stuff, and it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Some, like when I first did that before as well, I used a token.
Yeah.
You
It's
know what
more
I mean?
difficult, though, to use a token, you know,
Yeah,
because
because sometimes you got to look for it if it's
exactly.
not readily available to you.
Exactly. You got to look for it, or you're trying to remember what it was. Like you'd be like, I know I'm supposed to be looking for something, and
Yeah,
then you
yeah,
fall right back asleep.
yeah. But I tell you, it's in a lot of well, in Australia, it's known as dream time, where that world of reality is just as concrete and just as important as the waking state. And you know, like you said, you study different indigenous societies and classical civilizations. This is something that's common amongst our people in places like that. But it's like once you get to the West, a lot of times people aren't really in tune with some of these various different other aspects of consciousness, because that's essentially what it is. It's different aspects of consciousness.
Well, let me tell you something, okay?
Mhm.
So my mother is 100% Sicilian, and she was born on Samhain or Halloween, and her mother was born with a veil on her face, covering her face.
Mm.
And then on my father's side, that's my white side, okay? So he is English, Scottish, and Welsh, okay? And the Scottish part of him, we're descended from Sir William Wallace, or Braveheart, okay? When I did a DNA ancestry, DNA test, and got the results back, I learned that that English part of him conquered the Scottish and Welsh part of him, of my bloodline. So, we see the colonizers came here in 1492. But what a lot of people don't realize, and I talk a lot about this with my indigenous friends, is that my ancestors were colonized before their ancestors were. They got hit first. So, there were indigenous white people called the Picts, the blue painted men who lived in that part of Europe. And, the Romans, the Gauls, the Britons, they all came through and they colonized them first. So now they take that westernized atmosphere, that mindset, where they stole so many different teachings, like Alexandria got burnt down to the ground, like they took the cream for themselves, and they created a whole world here on this continent that the indigenous call Turtle Island in North America. And that world is completely void of all of these teachings, of all of these methodologies, of the consciousness that we're talking about. And it wasn't by accident, it's by design.
Hmm. And and that's a segue even into a deeper discussion about the societies that have maintained these type of teachings in secret for so many different generations, that a lot of us either aspire to want to be a part of but really don't have true access to it, or that we're on the fringes or on the outside of those type of societies, and we really don't have a true sense of what they actually do in secret, and their relationship to what we talked about in terms of the 10%, the people who are actually holding and monetizing the media, the content, in control of a lot of different industries. I seen this, and this is a side note. Recently, I think it was the 117th Congress, and this was the Congress that happened right after the new year. And one of the resolutions that they recently passed is for the House rules. They changed the House rules to a standard which is gender neutral now. So in the House rules on the Congress floor, they're not going to use phrases in terms like um, man or woman or father or mother. They're going to use like parent, child, sibling, make everything gender neutral now. And that's something that they just simply like slipped right past everybody. You had some objections, particularly from different Republican Congress people, not congressmen or women. But
uh,
I say that to say a lot of times you see policy being changed as well as constructed behind closed doors, where the average onlooker has no clue what is actually going on in the landscape. And when you look a little deeper, a lot of times you see that you have these packs, these political action committees, which are linked a lot of times to these type of secret societies who are actually crafting these policies and passing it over to our politicians who put it into practice, which
Hmm.
ultimately is enforced by the police.
Yeah. Well, think about
You
it.
know?
Okay, so let's say you have $1 billion, which
Hmm.
most people don't realize how much money that actually is, but $1 billion. At that point, you can do pretty much anything you want to do. Okay. And if you're somebody that has no spirituality, you haven't worked on your soul, like you're just driven by the ego, which most of those billionaires, if not all, uh, are that way because they're willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get to the top. The system's built for them. Now
Hmm.
you have $1 billion and now you're bored, you know? You're tired of the same old crap. Like maybe you want to go bomb the Middle East a little bit, maybe you want to enslave some people over in a third world country or something, but that's not doing it for you. You know,
Yeah.
what are you going to do now? Maybe you want to hunt people. You know what I mean? Or maybe you want to eat children and babies and violate, like, like they go off the rails to a point where they're like, damn, this is where I'm getting all this, the lifeblood. Like, you know, the crazy thing is that all of these are all truths, but I'll tell you what, some of the people that I've dealt with over the past few years got a hold of this recording. They'd be like, "See, he's part of that QAnon thing," you know. He believes that there's this, but it's true, man. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yo, one time I was talking to some of my after school students, and they're between the ages of 9 and 12, and we were discussing secret societies, and I was talking to them about people being in wealthy positions and why they create societies based upon secrecy, based upon some of the things you're talking about in terms of them having the ability to do whatever they want and for no one to be able to restrict them from doing what they want. So I put it to them this way. I said, say you and one of your friends have a problem at school with each other, and your friend knows something about somebody else that they would not want others to know. And they had the ability to share that around the school or even on TikTok or any of these other social media outlets. How would you feel about that if this person had that type of information? And if they strive to threaten to share that type of information, do you think that some people would want to fight them because of that? And all of them could relate to that because they experienced it before where people were willing to take information to put it out there to embarrass them,
yeah,
and how that created a lot of conflict and tension just on that level in school. And I said, okay, if you could see the possibility of that as students in school, do you think that it's also possible that adults may have the same type of information on somebody else that they could actually put out there that can cause them to lose millions of dollars?
that's
Do
the
you think that they would
definition.
just want to fight or get
That's,
mad about it? Or do you think people will lose their life behind something like that?
that is the best
If
definition
when
of
they thought
politics.
about it,
That's
yeah,
politics.
when they
That's
thought,
exactly what politics is. It's just people
yeah,
stockpiling dirt on each other and saying, like, if you release that dirt, we're gonna release this dirt, and so that it becomes a standstill, and now you got people in the middle that don't know what the hell is going on. Like if you're trying to actually follow what's happening and the players and all of that, and you're trying to get it from CNN, NBC, Fox News, everybody's got their spin on it. It's a story that's being told. And like the Capitol, damn, dude, there ain't no way that many people could just rush into the Capitol without everybody getting tear gassed and shot. Okay, now, of course, the rhetoric right now is always because they're white, but yes, but you have to go further with it because when we're talking about white, we're not just talking about skin color. We're talking about they were allowed in. Who allowed
mm,
them in? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter. They could have been black. But if they're part of that crew, they were allowed in. So it's like that was staged. Part of me was wondering, like, did they do that so that they can just get the rights and make a movie about it? Now there's going to be a TV show. Like, dude, I guarantee right now out there, there's 50 screenwriters all doing research, all of them trying to find the story leading up to the big finale of the Capitol being like, dude, 2000 and I think it was 2012, two movies came out, right? One was White House Down, and the other one was called Olympus Has Fallen. And they both came out at the same time. What do you think those studios were trying to do? You get what I'm saying? They're trying to affect the way that people think. And leading up to this point, now your conspiracy theorists will say, like, oh, they were alerting us. They were telling us the future, what's going to happen. And it's like, no, they weren't telling us the future. They're trying to get people to go out and pick up a gun and go kill somebody. You know, they're trying to get people to go and do these things by showing them that it's possible. So now you had, I don't know how many people, I was out on a location scout when that shit happened. I came home, I was like, what did I miss? So I don't know how many people stormed the Capitol, but now I guarantee there's other groups that are like, man, they got into the Capitol pretty easily. I bet we can get into the Capitol too. You know?
Yeah, because it's like in high school. If that's why you don't let nobody put their hands on you and just punch you in the face, because everybody else is standing around watching to see if you're gonna get your ass whooped, because they're gonna say, "Oh, I'm gonna whoop his ass next." So you gotta not let somebody take your heart like that, and that's one example that I think we've seen, that others are watching like, "Oh, word." That's what's going down, y'all, and y'all acting like this. That's like seeing a bully get his ass beat and not put up a fight at all, and everybody like, oh, word.
It's perception. You know, it's perception, you know, and everybody's perception of it started with Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi's houses, their own, you know, their personal private residences getting spray painted, and then people said, is it that easy to just go up to their house? Because I thought that there would be security and, you know, like, that's crazy. It started there and that escalated to the Capitol. And, you know, you or I, we wouldn't even think of going within the limits of the Capitol. I guarantee if I try to storm the Capitol, I guarantee I get blown to tiny little pieces. I guarantee it. Okay. Yeah. But now people are like, damn, we thought that was Fort Knox. We thought it was, to use a Mike Tyson term, we thought it was impregnable, cannot be pregnated, you know? No, they just impregnated that shit, you know? So, and they did it from inside. Like, they did it to themselves. You know what I mean? Like, that's the crazy thing, is like, that was not a bunch of redneck crazy guys. They were just the pawns in that.
And I seen one report come out, and it was saying that the data that they've gathered from people that were there, the average age of people that did it was 40 years and above. This wasn't a bunch of, according to that data, it wasn't a whole bunch of millennials that did it. It was people that were middle-aged and retired people.
Yeah. I saw one woman that was a grandmother that the cops were like walking down the stairs after she stormed the Capitol. Okay, you did it. You know, it's like, that's a participation trophy. Like, we're out here in Niagara Falls, like, for real activists in the middle of wild, wild west, people getting gunned down every single day, fighting billionaires and the power authority and all that shit. And we don't get no coverage. None. It is media blackout. This is the coverage that we get doing stuff like this. It's crazy, dude. Because if they put up a microphone in front of me or in front of you, it'd be like, you know, any revolutionary, I'm not even going to say it, but we all know what happens to them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's dangerous. You know, my very existence and your very existence is a danger to their idealism, to their agenda, to what they plan and what they execute, you know, and that's why I asked you about that antebellum. You know, because I felt like, damn, you know, like that. It's a movie, but at the same time, billionaires got billions of dollars, and it wouldn't be impossible for them to snatch somebody up and take them somewhere like that, like they were on a plantation, and I know that there's islands out there, man. Like, why do you think they want these private islands? So that they could do stuff that is unregulated, and like years ago, I remember reading about a dean at some Ivy League school that he was a child molester, and his people were bringing him children out to a small little shack in the woods that he would wait for them, and he wanted them as scared as possible. So it's like, that's just like a six-figure guy, and I mean, money's not the root of all evil, but the love of money it's greed.
Yeah.
And this greed that we see is only able to take root in the soil of oppression.
Mm. Mm.
If we're living in a society
So, I mean,
where everybody is equal and everybody has an equal say, and nobody's looking at each other with some rose-colored glasses or some skewed lens from their upbringing or what they're told to think, but everybody is just completely objective. You can be as greedy as you want to be, okay? But you're not going to be looking at each other like, oh, I got to steal what that guy has because he might get ahead of me. Then there's no equality. The whole thing goes back, So the questions are, and this has been a great discussion, but how are we going to move forward with everything that we're building? Like, I'm a filmmaker, I'm an artist, you're an author, you're a teacher, you have a great platform. I'm still building mine, like, how are we going to move forward and change the narrative and change the rhetoric? Because the 10% are in trouble. Okay? Not the 1%. So the 9% are in trouble. And they're fair game as far as I'm concerned. I'll start picking them off, like non-violently, but in terms like the pen is mightier than the sword. You know what I mean? Let's keep it in context. I'll start. I don't care who it is, man. Like, if you're foul like that, you're going down. It's fair game, dude. We are bred in poverty and adversity. We came from this. We're like a lotus flower growing in the muck. It's me, it's you. There's a lot of other people out there in the world, but right here in our city, there's enough of us that they haven't been able to stop us, and we said some shit and we've done some shit that they haven't liked. But I'm still here, and you're still here. And what's going to happen, the number one thing that I see that we got to do is we need to support indigenous people, because indigenous people are at the front line of the human rights cause, the war. They don't got clean water. They don't got food. It's just recent that they've been able to actually practice their own culture. So they're right there and they're still holding on. We got to get behind them and make a push for that, because pretty soon water is going to be like oil. They're already starting to trade on the stock market. They're already starting to trade water. Yeah. Okay. And what you need to live, you need food, you need shelter, you need water. Okay. Now, most people don't own any of their property. The bank owns it. Okay. You're paying a mortgage. You can't even own land because the United States or New York State own it. So you can't, nobody ever really owns land, but not getting into the spiritual aspect of it. Now it's going to be the water. And I firmly believe that the first test that they did was in Flint, Michigan. I think that that's where they were like, because they literally took a giant lever and switched it. They had it from Lake Michigan, where they were getting water for years, to the Flint River, which they knew was completely polluted. They knew had lead in it. They knew that it was toxic, but they were like, hey, we could save a couple million a year. Let's do it. Oh no, what happened? What happened? You pulled a lever. That's what happened. So they caused that. And I just seen today that there's going to be indictments. There's been an investigation, but there's going to be indictments. They're talking about indicting the governor, who was governor at the time, and So the the hammer's gonna drop. But I feel like that was like a social experiment, and they were thinking,
Yeah.
is anybody gonna care about these 150,000 black people, mostly black people? Is anybody gonna care that they don't got water right now? Nobody's talking about it. You know, it was hot for a couple years, but they're still out there struggling. So, that same thing could happen right here in the city of Niagara Falls, bro.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of my approaches towards solutions is being an educator and making sure that I'm consistently in the lives of the younger people so that, like I said earlier, I can help them to become caring, critical thinking adults. Because I don't have a lot of confidence and faith in a lot of the adults that I see and that you see who are corrupt and who are messing things up the way that we see it right now. It's just going to have to be a time when they're no longer in power, whether that is because of their health, whether it's because of other different reasons. But we definitely have to prepare the next generation to be able to take their place and to take care of this planet the way that we are striving to take care of it. And the only way that we're going to do that is to be able to invest in the youth.
Well, that's it. And the Six Nations here, the Haudenosaunee,
Mm-hmm.
they have a way that they live their life. It's supposed to be for the next 7 generations, and our children are our greatest asset. They're our biggest investment, and I think that I'm a millennial. I'm 31 years old, so I'm on the older spectrum of being a millennial. I was the last generation that, didn't have cell phones growing up and then got them when we were, 16, 17. Um, but now you got kids growing up with cell phones. So it's like that toxin that we were talking about, like the manipulation and, all of it. It's right in front of them, and so many young parents give their kids a screen to look at just to distract them, but you're handing them right over to the 10%, like here, work on their mind. And so,
Mm-hmm.
not to generalize too much, but the boomer generation, I mean, like you got Congress, you got 80-year-old congressmen, they're like, oh, we can't give them $600, oh, not $600, like there's that type of archetype in that generation is so stingy.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they've done is
they you give them $600, they gonna go buy a bayonet or something.
right. It's like they don't want us having anything. They want us to struggle and fight amongst ourselves. And one thing that they've done is they've looked at us, their children, and they've been like, why should you have it easier? We didn't have it easy. Why should you have it any better? And it's like, first of all, it's not true because right after World War II, they had it great. And second of all, why wouldn't you want your children to have it easier or better? Why wouldn't you want there to be more resources for them? Like toughen up. I'll give you something to cry about. I believe in discipline, but I don't believe in trying to put them down before they even learn how to walk. And that I see that so much. And you don't want to step in and tell people how to raise their kids. But man, I know you see it as a teacher. I know you see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's an ugly world sometimes, man. Like we're just getting out of 2020, which started off great, but towards the end it was a struggle. And 2021, I think for the world at large is going to be crazy. I think people are not ready. I think at least 85% of the world is not ready. They don't know what the hell. Like you said, they're getting fed stuff that's months old. Just like they get technology that's years old, and they don't know what the hell is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're told to look one way, they're getting slapped in the face the other way. I work in the film industry, dude. Like I could tell you market analysis all day. I could tell you trends. I could tell you and all of that metadata, all of those algorithms, like how we use on social networking, all the algorithms, all of the data that's collected, that all gets fed right back to you. So what people need to understand is, if you're saying like, why don't we have better content? Well, then you need to stop watching the shitty content. You need to vote, like vote with your views, vote with your dollar. Because when you're watching the shitty content, they go, oh, look, 2 million people watch this movie. Let's make another one. We need to focus on guys like us, the indie guys, people who support us that go, that guy's got a way about him that I like. He's an artist and I want to see more of his stories. Guess what? That metadata changes. Those algorithms change. And all of a sudden, we're the ones who are putting out those mainstream movies, music, whatever it is. So these trends that we're creating, you have to be strong enough to say, I'm not just going to go with the flow, because by the time you catch a trend, it's already over. It's already moved through. If you want to be a trendsetter, you got to be that pariah. You got to be that outlandish character that changes everything. And I'm not saying you got to start dressing like a female or like doing whiteface
on airplanes.
Yeah, you don't gotta, there's a limit, but you got to be true, and that's why, like, we live in a difficult reality. Okay, to us, we call this reality samsara, and samsara is a world of suffering, because it's karma. And so we live in this reality where when you speak something, it comes back at you, and constantly people are just blabbing, they're babbling, right? And the more that they babble, they're like, I don't understand why this always happens to me, and I can't get ahead, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you made an excellent point, because a few months ago, you said that you were a part of a Fathers Helping Fathers group, and that, like, anything you posted in there that was, like, uplifting or enlightening, they would delete, because they all just want to complain about, like, child support and shit. I'm in a similar group, and it's the same thing. My baby mama took me to court. I can't believe this bitch, all this. And I'm like, you are telling your story, and it's like, whatever you want to be, you need to be that. It goes back to us talking about content creation. I'm making content. I'm writing. I'm producing. I'm drawing. I'm painting. I'm doing all of that. And am I doing it because someone's paying me to do it? Most of 99% of that stuff, no. I'm doing it because I'm an artist. I'm doing it because I'm a creator. If I'm not creating, then I'm not exercising my power as a creator.
And who's going to be able to tell the story to people if the writers and the artists and the creatives are not doing it?
Dude, I tell you what, man, like, that's the one thing, because my whole life I've never known if I'm going to make it to my next birthday, and you know that. So, I'm out here kicking the hornet's nest, and it's like, I just don't know for sure. Like, damn, or just, you could step off a curb and get hit by a bus, or you could eat something and choke on it. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many ways to just die that I'm like, I want to tell my story. I don't want anybody else to be like, I don't want them to tell it good or bad. I don't want to be colored over,
Yeah, people don't realize that Hitler had a background in art, and he wanted to actually go to art school. And one of the things that he used to do is, when he would go to a village or an area that he would want to take over, he would send his military there first as an advance team, and he would have them drill holes in the landmarks in that area, and he would confiscate all of their art. So what people begin to do is, before he would actually invade an area, they would take their art and put it on train carts to get it out of the city to preserve it, because he would confiscate all of the art. And if that city or that area didn't surrender, he would put explosives where he drilled holes in their landmarks, in order to basically not only just destroy the people, but kill the memory of the people. Because if you confiscate all of the art and you destroy their creativity, there is no one that will be able to tell their story but you. And the same type of mindset and mentality you see going on all over the world when people want to erase the voice of a people, especially oppressed people. They destroy their art. They defund art programs. They don't
Mhm.
encourage people to live a purposeful life and to be creatives. And I think that's one of the things that is the silver lining in what we've been seeing through this pandemic, is that we've started to see a rise of creatives and people seeing that they have a voice and they have the ability to preserve and tell the stories of the people, because that's what we need.
For sure. I mean, even jazz was born out of Harlem, is born out of oppression and poverty. And, you take people and you stick them in an area, and then you blame them for their own poverty, and you get them stuck in this cycle, like the father was a drug dealer, and then, he goes to prison. The son grows up with no parent. All he knows is drug dealing because he was around it. So he becomes a drug dealer, and then they get the revolving door, and they're stuck in what are these ghettos, And so it's like, what some of them are able to go, okay, I need an escape from this. I got to figure out with these hands, I got to figure out how can I get out of here, and they'll start writing and they'll start rapping and they'll start producing music or, painting or whatever it is. And, we've talked about like the Niagara Renaissance movement, because Niagara Falls is an impoverished place. And,
Mhm.
the world is impoverished right now. So it is a renaissance that's coming out of this poverty. People have been stuck in their houses for a whole year. So, creators have been creating. There's been new content. Like, for example, when I say new content, one thing that's difficult as a writer is if you have a movie that takes place after 2008, those characters have to have cell phones. Everybody's got cell phones. So if you're writing a horror movie and it takes place after 2008, you're going, just call somebody. You know what I mean? Just call the cops, or, call somebody. Get out of there. Call somebody. So then you got to write around that. Be like,
Yeah.
well, they dropped their phone. Their phone battery died. They left their phone in the car. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
changes the art. I did my senior thesis in high school on the reflection of society in film. Because, for example, when nuclear power became this big thing, there was a whole propaganda campaign about nuclear energy. And then you got movies like Godzilla, and you got movies like, Them, with the giant tarantulas and giant bugs. And this is what's going to happen, guys. This is it. The nuclear power is going to create giant spiders, you know?
Mm.
So the fear became a part of the culture. And, so we're looking at a reflection of art reflects society, which then reflects art. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. And we can use art to change society. We already do that anyway. If we're sitting here talking and we're wearing bell bottoms, you know what I mean? Like, if we're sitting here and we're dressed like if I had my afro like I did earlier, you might think, oh, we're living in the 60s. And the thing is, it's just fashion. They're telling us how to look, how to dress, how to talk, all of those things. Like you were saying about our attention spans is shortening the characters, we're typing with our thumbs now. So
Mhm.
we're not consciously evolving in those ways. It's not a conscious evolution. We're just going, trying to adapt. And when we are conscious of it, that's when all of a sudden you're getting those phone calls, like, yo, I want to work with you. What do you got? Show me your reel, and because they're like, it's like a moth to a flame, because there are good people out there in the entertainment industry who are like us. There are good people that came up from the streets. There are good people that were born into a better livelihood, but then, found their humanity. And now more than ever, we're looking at a cultural revolution. Like, we're not just talking about one culture. One great thing about Niagara Falls is we're a melting pot. So, you know, like it's been this place that all these different cultures have run down to and created a new culture, you know, and we don't have a name for this new culture yet. You know, we don't have a brand for this new culture yet. We are the faces of this new culture. The world at large just doesn't understand that yet because we're right here at the ground floor. We see it every day. We're living it. By the time they catch on to it, we're gonna be ghosts of the past. You know, like we'll be coming out with gray hairs, like, oh yeah, yeah, you know, it's a great teaching. I remember talking about that with Saladin, January
Mm-hmm.
2021. Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
because we're in an epicenter. That's one reason why this whole place has been locked down and conquered and taken over. I mean, you see it
Mm-hmm.
all over the world. You look at the Middle East, the Holy Land. It's just been
Mm-hmm.
war nonstop, more war.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you look at Tibet. The Chinese occupy Tibet. They don't want Tibetans to just be living, doing their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're way up in the Himalayas, they ain't bothering anybody.
Yeah. Exactly. Why? Why are you even invading a place like that?
That's
Says a lot.
people got to do the knowledge, bro. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Is that they got to do the research. You know, they got to look it up. That's why I wrote the book that I wrote. I know you've written books about it because people got to do the knowledge. Like why? Why the Black Hills? You know, we had our brother Chase Iron Eyes here. You know, Chase is from
Mm-hmm.
uh, Standing Rock. And for his people, the Lakota, the Black Hills is a sacred mountain. Well, guess what? Now it's Mount Rushmore. So you got four old white slave owners, their faces carved into their sacred mountain. Why?
Mm.
Why that mountain? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the Black Hills was full of gold, and that's why they were killing and stealing. But then they decided that they had to put the presidents, the founding fathers' faces on that mountain. So every single day, when they go, the Lakota, when they see that, it reminds them of who's in charge.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay, bro. I'm gonna wrap it up now, but we definitely got to come on and do this again and build about some other different topics that we didn't have an opportunity to touch on today.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate
I
you. Thank you.
appreciate you. Love you, bro.
Love you too,
And
bro. All right, peace.
I'm gonna bring a new show over soon so she could play with Odin.
You have to, man, because I'll tell you what, like he's hitting a growth spurt. Randy brought Oren over, and it was just like a hurricane. So we got to get the kids together, you know. And he
Yeah.
needs that enrichment too because he's been stuck in the house. You know, he needs to see people
Yeah.
his age. And uh,
Just
what's that? Yeah, for sure. All right, bro. Have a good
yeah.
night.
All right, bro. Peace.
Peace.